So this week we are talking about the voice. We are talking about the importance of using our voice, how we can speak confidently, exercises, nutrition, and tips we can use to really unblock that throat chakra, to be able to speak better in public, but also to be our true, authentic self. And my guest this week on the Face Yoga Expert podcast is Caroline Goyder. And Caroline is internationally acclaimed speaking coach. She has a TED Talk with over 10 million views. She has worked with so many A-list celebrities, with royalty. She's worked with politicians. And I love that she brings us practical tips that we can use in order to express ourselves. But she also talks about the emotional and spiritual aspects as well. So it's such an interesting and I think important conversation. So let's dive straight in to this week's episode with Caroline. Caroline, a warm welcome to this week's episode of the Face Yoga Expert podcast. How are you today?
Well, first, it's so lovely to be here, Danielle, and I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, well, it's lovely to have you here. And we had a very brief chat a few minutes ago before we started recording. And we said so much of what we do actually crosses over and we have so much in common in terms of what we teach. So I'm really excited to delve into what you do today.
We can explore. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too.
Let's start maybe with the big picture and talk about the voice and why it's so important for us to use our voice to express ourselves, particularly in the day and age that we live in. And I'm going to say this only because about 98% of my audience are women, particularly as women.
The thing I always think, why did no one tell me this when I was 20? Is that the voice, our voices are breath, right? And breath is at the core of who we are, right? Try stopping doing it for a few minutes and see how that leaves you. And I wish that someone had sat me down at 15 or younger and said, your voice is not just the thing that helps you answer the question in maths or makes you feel embarrassed when you talk to that boy. It's at the center of who you are. It's at the center of your body because it's breath coming out of your lungs, hitting your larynx. And so it's absolutely your identity and what's going to really help you as a human in life and as a woman particularly, because as you say, women's voices are still often silenced, is to learn how to use it and to learn how to, like you teach, to be centered in your body. And I think there's loads of crossover between face yoga, yoga itself, which as you know means yoking, harnessing, and what we teach in voice, but I don't think we make those connections enough, and that's the bit that frustrates me a little bit.
I agree. I think there's so much connection, and even what we talk about in yoga in terms of the throat chakra, and also the massive connection of the throat chakra and our whole solar plexus area. So, particularly as women with the reproductive system and the similarities between the two. I have a yoga teacher friend. I mean, I've been a yoga teacher myself for 20 years, but I have a yoga teacher friend, and I think in every class I've ever attended of hers, because I love going to her classes, she always says, we're going to work on the hips now, so you need to release the jaw.
Yes.
And she calls them sisters. And I love how she calls the jaw and the hips sisters. So often when we are tight around that area in the hips, and we're perhaps going through things to do with our reproductive or hormonal health, this manifests in our jaw and our voice and our throat chakra, and vice versa. When we're not using our voice, this can often show up as hormonal and reproductive issues as well. But I'll let you talk a little bit more about that because I want to hear from you today.
I mean, it is this, and it's funny because whenever I go and see my Pilates teacher and we do anything to release pelvis, I'll go, oh, and I'll touch my jaw.
Yeah,
And she's like,
always.
you're the only one who notices. And I think for everyone listening, just to start to notice that, when you do some of those lovely jaw exercises, that it has an impact on your pelvis and it has an impact on your breath. And that has an impact on your voice. So simply, things I wish I'd been taught going back in the day, If you're feeling nervous about a meeting, I mean, like I've had a long day today before we're speaking, so I did some jaw massage and I chant.
Yeah.
Because chanting for me, and if anybody hasn't tried it, I love Chloe Goodchild's work on this. She's wonderful. But if you just chant an or anything that you've been taught in a yoga class, even if you just hum a song you like, it connects you back to the body and it opens up your resonance. And if you chant an open sound, it opens up your throat
Yes.
and it resets your nervous system and it gets your voice out there. And it just put some music on in the car and sing along to something that you love because it is so fundamental in resetting confidence. And I don't think it's where, we're talking in the UK, your listeners may be all over, but I think in the UK, we don't do enough singing. That's not true in all cultures.
So true. And actually, I've just been to a wedding in Wales and they had a local choir singing there. And the
Oh, wow.
culture in
Yeah.
Wales of singing is
Different.
much
Yeah, I
more
shouldn't
so. But
speak for
you're
the whole
right,
UK. Wales,
in
I'm
England.
sorry.
But you're right, we don't. And we lose that connection to our voice in that expressive way. And yes, if we're a yogi and we're used to chanting, we do it. But in day to day, we suppress so much. And how do we overcome that, do you feel? I mean, you can either share very practical tips to do that or a little bit more sort of emotional and even spiritual, if you like.
Should we start practical and then go
Yeah.
get well if we so I was working with a client yesterday and she's very academic and very quite serious. But she has a child, and it doesn't have to be your child. It could be a niece, a nephew, a friend. And I said, just read Dr. Seuss and be really, really playful and really silly. And it could be any old kids book, but have fun with it. And she read this book to me, and her voice was more musical. It was lighter. I think people used to say to me, "You sound really serious." And I think even my husband used to say, "You've got your serious voice on." And I think I thought back then, and I think it sometimes still happens now, that when I had to kind of do something responsible, that I had to sound like a grown up. But actually, when you think about the great speakers, the kind of Brené Browns, there are certain politicians over the years who've been like that. There aren't very many at the moment, I have to say. They are speaking from a really true center, and it's often quite light, quite youthful. It has an energy that is true. I think we have to learn that stuff. But what I'm saying is if you play, if you talk to a child, if you read a book, if you sing, like we've said, anything that lets your energy out is going to tap into a voice that is really powerful because there's no armor to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret. In terms of the spiritual connection to that, I mean, you know this better than I do. About 2 years ago, I started to learn more about mindfulness and breath work. And I realized how noisy my mind was. And when I coach speakers now, if I hear someone whose voice is very flat, they're talking, but they're kind of not really there, and you can't work out why you're going off and thinking about something else. It's often because their brain is doing an internal discussion of what they're saying, or their brain is thinking about something completely different. I can be thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner and talk to you, but if my brain is having a different conversation, my voice is really flat. So the thing that is going to really help your voice is A, to get into your body, but also B, quieten your mind.
Yeah.
Because when we're present to others, to ourselves, our voice finds its own energy and freedom. And I think I've only really deeply understood that. I kind of got it as a principle, but by actually a daily meditation, 5 minutes, nothing too serious, has really helped me to tap into that. And I mean, I know it's something that you talk about. It's really worth doing for your voice.
It's so important. And why do you think it's essential that we use our voice?
I mean, this is going to the extreme of the kind of the spiritual in the sense that in December my father died
Oh, I'm sorry.
and I was with him when he died. And he was a saxophonist, so as well as being a solicitor, he did both. So he was all about the breath. But when you hear someone's last breath, especially someone who lived for breath, it makes you realize that it's, all the cliches are true. It's not a rehearsal. And I mean, I can count in the decade, the fingers of one hand, the decades I've got left if I'm lucky, and it might not be all of that hand.
Mhm.
If we don't use our voices, I think we've wasted the reason that we're here. And I think the question for all of us is, how can I help others knowing what I know? It's like the ikigai of this is what I care about, this is how I can help. What's in the middle of that? Speak for that because you're going to change things for people. And I honestly think that's why we're here. So
I agree.
we've gone to it.
We've gone to it straight away.
Yeah.
We love going deep. That's great. And it's so true. And I think a lot of that also comes from us being our authentic self and being vulnerable, actually. I know that word is often overused nowadays, but being vulnerable enough to express ourselves, express our truth, but also allow ourselves to be free from the judgment of ourselves and what we perceive is going to be judgment from other people. And I say what we're going to perceive because 9 times out of 10 people aren't judging us in the way that we expect they're going to. But those things often stop us from using our voice. And it's interesting, would be interesting to know what you think about this. But when I say using a voice, it doesn't always mean giving every opinion on everything and upsetting people. It actually means speaking our truth from a loving, authentic place and sharing our message with the world.
And I'm absolutely with you because I think the speakers that we all recognize as being the best speakers are actually great listeners. And when they speak, I mean, we're going to other family members now. My granny was a Quaker, and her thing, the Quaker's thing, is don't speak unless you improve the silence. How do you know how to improve the silence? Because you're listening for what's missing, what hasn't been said, what needs calling out. And you can only do that if you're in deep presence, if you're not, in a monologue or thinking about something else. If you're in the room really listening, thinking about what other people are experiencing, what they need, you will know exactly what to say and when to speak. The problem for really great listeners, and I'm gendering this now because I see it as a pattern in women a lot, is that they're great listeners, but then in the moment that comes where they could speak, they don't because they think, oh, little old me, no one wants to hear from me. And what I say to clients is in those moments rather is if you don't speak in that moment, what is left unsaid? If you go forward in time, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years, if you don't speak now, what won't happen or what will happen? And sometimes by not speaking, by holding back our voice, we prevent something from happening which could. So always ask yourself that question, what will happen if I don't speak here? If I'm noticing this thing, maybe in a work context, that nobody else is noticing, but I decide not to call it out because, oh, little old me, it's kind of the emperor has no clothes, isn't it? Then what might happen? And if I have the courage to speak to that thing I'm noticing that no one else has noticed, what might change? A lot.
Absolutely a lot. And what can we actually do in terms of exercises to strengthen our voice? And again, that can be emotionally, spiritually, but also practically.
In a really, really practical way, the thing I say to clients is that speaking up in meetings is like it's like driving in a big city. I'm not a great driver. I live in London and I'm not a great driver
I'm
in
not
London.
either. As soon as you said that, I felt way more
Oh,
terrified than speaking my truth. Driving in London, terrifying.
but it's really connected because if you think about you've got to pull out into traffic on a busy road in London, you've got to know where you're going,
Mhm.
set an intention, be really clear on why you're in the room and how you can help. Good drivers know where they're going. The second thing good drivers do, I observe in them, is they're not worrying about it. They're just really present. Here I am, the traffic is coming. Oh, there's a gap. They're they're deeply present and they trust their gut. And when the gap comes, they go. And the final piece of good drivers is that they're bold. Doesn't mean being dangerous, but it means if you're going to pull out into that traffic, commit and go.
Yeah.
And I think often when we're hesitant as speakers, firstly, we're not intentional. We don't know why we're there and how we can help. Always know how you can help the situation. The second thing is our heads are really noisy and we're going, oh, they're going to think you're an idiot. Don't say that. Oh, look, they all know loads more than you. Look, they're all 10 years older than you. Why would they want to hear you? That's like, that's going to stop you driving well. It's going to stop
Mhm.
you speaking well.
Mhm.
And then the final piece is that when they do speak up, and we've all done this, they're hesitant. And so that guy, because it often is that guy, cuts in
Yeah.
because sometimes it's a woman that they are sensing that you're not confident, just like being cut up in traffic. But if you own it when you speak, and you can always honor that person's comment, thank you, love what you're saying about the new project. And what I want to add is this, then you're being bold, but you're also in a way giving them a compliment. You're kind of going with the flow of the traffic. And I think if you do those three things, the intentionality, the presence, and then be bold, you'll start to go, wow, I spoke up and everyone turned and listened to me.
Yeah.
And it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You start to build a confidence and you start to notice that you have impact.
Absolutely. And did you ever have a time where you struggled with speaking in public or expressing yourself?
Still, I mean, I'm the teacher who teaches what she needs.
Yeah.
I am I call it the club of I didn't want to speak, but I'm glad I did. And I honestly think to all introverts out there that if you're an introvert who really would rather not speak but has been invited to, just say yes. Because if it costs you, if it means you have to ramp up your energy, if it means you really have to think about it, you're going to give something useful. And it is no better feeling than having overcome that slight feeling of dread and done the work and slightly pushed through it, like going for a run at 6 o'clock on a winter morning. The adrenaline rush and the feeling and the thank yous is worth it. But I am here to tell you, as someone who coaches speakers for a living and does a few talks myself, that I still get a feeling of dread,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
That's okay. It's really okay. And I think that's such an important message. And there's a reason why public speaking is, well, I know for the UK's biggest fear. And if you, as a professional speaking coach, feel like that, then it almost gives permission for the rest of us to feel like that as well. And I think, again, it's that vulnerability. And because you're expressing that, you're then allowing us to go, okay, we can express that. I always say to my daughters, feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's literally that.
It's that. And I think we kind of get it wrong because we look at speakers who seem really polished and confident, and there are lots of them out there in this world at the moment. And we think that's not for me. We all have a voice and we can all use it. And the thing I always remember if I'm walking out in front of a big crowd is the Chris Martin thing. Apparently, he says to himself before those big Wembley style gigs, we're doing this together. And if, as a speaker, you remember that you're helping the audience and it's not you being judged by them, but it's you with them having a conversation, then I think the whole thing shifts.
It really does. I agree. I always say a similar thing to myself when I'm about to speak. I always say, when I'm in a place of service, I can't get nervous.
And
It's
that's the
not about
heart, isn't
me.
it?
Yeah, it's not about me. It's not about what I sound like, what I look like, what I'm teaching. It's about being of service. What can I show up today to do, which is going to help somebody? It's going to make a difference to their lives. How can I add value to them? And I always try and shift it from that because it's so easy to let the ego take over and think it's all about us. And often when the ego does take over, that's when the lack of confidence comes, and the worry and the dread and all the rest of it. But yeah, going, like you say, from the heart center, or even deeper than that, from a deep
Gut.
soul
Yeah.
place, gut as well. Yeah, definitely. And is there anything we can eat or drink that's actually going to help that voice, again, from a practical level? But again, it can be even from an emotional point of view, nourishing ourselves.
That, I mean, that's such a great question. And as you know, the first thing is hydration.
Yeah.
Because the voice, like everything in the body, benefits from nice, hydrated, plump cells.
Yeah.
So drink water. Obviously, you don't want to be running to the loo 2 minutes before you speak. So in moderation and through the day.
Yeah.
Actors will say not too much coffee. I
Mhm.
For my first book, I interviewed A-list actors, and Bill Nye was one of the actors. And I mean, apart from the fact that he rocks, he gave some really good advice, which is the second cup of coffee is normally ill-advised because walking out in front of an audience is a massive adrenaline spike, and you don't want your cortisol to be already off the charts. So you can have that little cup of coffee if it gets your brain going, but then know that you're going to get enough of a buzz anyway without caffeination. And then the final really good active principle is protein. You don't want too much carb before you speak because it really dampens down your energy. So actors will always say, eat like an athlete, eat lightly and eat protein.
That's
And
great.
then you can have the big dinner afterwards once you're done.
Great. And what were the common themes when you interviewed A-listers? And I know you've worked with royalty and politicians. Is there any sort of common thread of perhaps fears and worries that come up for them in terms of speaking, and then things that they actually use to help them express themselves better?
It was such a revelation. I mean, because I wrote that book well over 10 years ago, and I was working at a drama school at the time. And I really went into the interviews with like Kate Winslet and Helen Mirren and Sarah Jessica Parker and all of these people that I really revered, thinking that they would give me tips from on high about this magical thing called confidence. None of them had any confidence. And I just remember going, it was almost like oh my God, okay. You mean that you can operate at that level without feeling confident? Yeah. I mean, the reality is that they have probably more confidence than some of us because, stepping out in front of a huge film crew takes a little bit of bottle. But deep down inside all of them there was a lot of imposter syndrome in a very competitive industry. And what they taught me, and I remember, people like Kate Winslet and Rufus Sewell saying this thing, is that you have to learn that what you see as blue is blue, not try and second guess what you think someone wants you to see. And Rufus Sewell gave a brilliant example of we're casting for extras, and we find this amazing kid off the street, and he's just right. And then he comes back the next day to shoot, and he's had his teeth done, he's had a haircut, he's bought a load of new clothes
Yeah.
because he's trying to be the thing that he thought we wanted him to be. Actually, we wanted him to be him. And in trying to be what he thinks we want, he's killed that truth, that energy. That for speakers is everything. Don't do the speech that you think they want you to give. Yeah, understand the brief. Yes, think about how you can serve to your point, but then channel what makes you you, because that's what lights you up.
Yeah, it really does. And did you manage to do that when you did your TED talk, which at the moment I think has something like 10 million views? Did you manage to harness that energy within yourself in order to, because I guess you knew it's something that you had to show up for in a big way and that was going to be seen by a lot of people. Talk us through that process.
It was funny because I hadn't intended to do a talk at TEDx Brixton. I'd just emailed Stephanie and said, I love that you're doing a TEDx in my hometown. Can I help? And then I coached as a speaker coach 2 years running. And then she said, well, you've just written a book. Do you want to pitch a talk? So I did. And they said yes. But at that point, this is where I did some work. That I realized that even if only 10 people watched it, that I'm a speaker coach.
Mhm.
It's one thing that you don't want to mess up. I had a lovely coach in the US who said, this is quite a high jeopardy act.
Mm.
And so what that meant was that I did a lot of work to get the message really honed. And then I found, and I think this is the thing for anybody thinking of doing one, I found this prop, which is a man's torso shaped like a chest of drawers by a maker called George who was in Peckham randomly. We just found him on the internet. But it was I'd done the work so I could be playful because the more work you do, the more you can let go when you get on stage. And I had this prop that felt really creative and fun
Mhm.
and a bit different. One of the coaches, I worked with a stand-up comedy director, and he was like, ditch that prop, which was probably good advice on one level, but I had this deep instinct that it was giving me a feeling of playfulness and fun, so I fought for it. And I'm really, really glad I did. And I think that's the thing that no one else, however expert they are, can know in the end what's right for you on stage. And you have to listen to your gut. You have to trust that gut instinct.
You do.
Take the advice, but then trust.
Absolutely. And how much do you think our inner knowing, our gut instinct, our intuition plays a part in us being a confident and eloquent speaker?
I actually think that underneath, once you do the work, the thing that is most important is trusting that inner knowing. I mean, that is, and it's about little and often daily practice, tapping into self-awareness, going inside, tuning into what's happening in your body, noticing how noisy your mind is or not, noticing where your breath is, noticing your jaw, your pelvis, what's going on, and being self-aware. Because when we're self-aware, we're able to be present to others. And the best speakers they're just dancing. It's like the best yoga teachers, the best teachers in anything. They're pulling in the energy from the room.
Yeah.
It's not the them show. It's Chris Martin. They're dancing together, and that comes from a place of deep stillness and deep self-awareness, which is where all of these ancient disciplines are absolutely bang on.
They
They
are.
knew. They knew.
They did know, absolutely. And you talk a lot about breath. Is there a particular breath technique that you teach to your clients to use sort of on a daily basis to help them with their voice?
I mean, my teaching, my tradition comes out of drama schools, really. And the thing that every actor learns on pretty much day two of drama school is that if and it's, yoga teacher,
Yeah,
your
same.
first lesson, if you
Same.
release the body, the breath will follow.
Mhm.
So actors spend a lot of time swinging out shoulders, swinging out legs, torso rotations, shaking out the jaw, and just anything you can do to open. I can feel that after today, my shoulders are tight. So if I was going on stage, I'd want to release shoulders. I'd want to release jaw. I'd want to move my facial muscles. Because the more I can open up the body, the more my breath will flow freely. It's what yoga's all about, isn't it?
Mhm.
And then the final piece is if I just chant, if I just get the motor of my voice running, if I hum, if I overuse my mouth, get the consonants alive, get my face moving, then it's like the engine starts easily as a speaker. The stand-up comedy rule is don't warm up in front of your audience. And so many speakers that you might have a beta blocker or a small glass of wine or a Barks rescue remedy, but there's no sense that I'm going to physically warm up. If you warm up physically, it will feel so much more fun.
It's so true. And actually, I guess if anyone listening to this is sort of thinking ahead of perhaps a big meeting that they've got, or a presentation they're doing, or a class they're going to teach, would you say that actually just taking themselves off somewhere beforehand, shaking out, releasing jaw, taking a few deep breaths, and just getting in the body is the simplest thing they have to do. That's sort of what I'm sort of pulling together from all the lovely advice you're giving.
Yeah, if we make it really simple, step one, go off into a quiet room. It can be the ladies' loo,
Yeah,
and just come back to your body.
yeah.
Feel your feet on the floor, feel the air on your face, feel the clothes on your skin. Get still. Notice, is there any physical tension in my body? Really simple. Release where you feel the tension. You might do it with your hands, you might massage your jaw, you might stretch out your shoulders, but just go, where am I holding? How can I release that? And then finally, a really simple exercise, which I bet you know, just to reset your diaphragm. You just breathe in for 4 and you hold. And you want to breathe in as low and wide as you can, get the ribs moving. You hold for about 6 to 8, and then you breathe out slowly for 6. You do that a couple of times. You breathe in for 4, you hold for about 6 or 8, and then slowly through the mouth, you let the breath out. And that just lets your diaphragm have a little stretch and a move. And it's amazing how it resets your feeling as well. And if you just do those 3 things, it can take 3 minutes. You'll just feel different as you walk out on stage or into the meeting.
Those great tips. And something I ask all my guests at the end of the podcast is if you were to share with the audience your top tip for inner peace and really feeling your best in mind, body, and soul, what would that be?
This is something I'm working with. I feel like in life there are layers of an onion.
Absolutely.
And the feeling I'm working with is the feeling of relief. Because when I think of that moment where something, and the moment where you just go, oh, that feeling of how my body lets go on the out breath, and I feel my chest and my jaw release. I think all of us operating out of that feeling of relief more in this world that we're living in right now, which is pulling us in the opposite direction, just as much as you can. I'm doing this all the time. Come back to a feeling I'm safe in my body. It's safe to breathe, and I feel a sense of relief. And that's what I'm playing with right now. And I hope it helps other people. I think we need it in this world.
We need it. And we almost need that reminder multiple times a day. We really do. Even I find this as well, even just hearing a tip like that, which is something, again, I try and remind myself of all the time, is almost like I need someone saying that to me every couple of hours.
Every
Because
time I pick up my phone,
absolutely, we can just suddenly go back to that stress and that fear and that worry and that tension. But it's just letting go.
and we don't need it,
Mhm.
and when we let go of it, the interesting stuff happens. We show up
Yes.
differently. I mean,
Yes.
this is my life's path, and the reason I teach it is because it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's not meant to be easy. Caroline, thank you so much. Please share with everyone where they can get in touch with you and hear more about the amazing offerings that you have.
What's lovely to say is that if you go to my website, which is carolinegoyder.com, we've got 2 little courses. One is the Confidence Booster audio course, which gives you a lot of the things that we've just talked about. And the other one is the Gravitas course, which is a video course. And that gives you some of the tools for acing it in your work meetings. And those 2 courses are totally free, and they'll give you a really good introduction to what I do. The books are Gravitas, Find Your Voice, and the actor book, Star Qualities. And they're all on Amazon, Audible, and all good bookstores.
Amazing. Caroline, thank you so much for being here today. You shared so much knowledge. I know it's been helpful for me, and I know it'll be so helpful for my audience as well.
It's been such fun to talk, and I just love the crossover. I love your work
Absolutely.
as well.
Thank you.